Recording in private, so I don't have a picture.
Okay, it was muted.
The Seforno, he has a certain approach we find by the Egel. Although the majority of the people were not involved in actually the idolatry, but remaining silent and not saying anything was the basis for the level of culpability, liability. How do you watch such a thing happen and not say anything? I mean, first they kill Chur because he tried to intervene, and Aaron feels he has no choice but to play along with them. And ultimately, when it happens, the vast majority of Jews remain silent. So therefore, when Moshe Rabbeinu had said, "Mi Hashem Elai," whoever's forgot, come with me, and all Shevet Levi went and killed idolaters, although Levi was the smallest Shevet tribe among all the Jews. So the original silence was the basis for the culpability. Remaining silent when all the idolaters were killed, the second silence was a correction on the first silence. That's how the Seforno had learned over there. Over here, there's such a Chil Hashem taking place. I mean, this man, the prince of Shevet Shimon, tribe of Shimon, is openly cohabiting with a Midianite princess. And nobody says anything. Everybody's watching, standing by the sidelines, watching this. It's a Chil Hashem, and the Jews are getting involved in the Balpor. It's something which is unconscionable. How do you remain silent? So the Torah goes out of its way to say, when Pinchas, he killed Zimri, the Torah makes it a point, he avenged my vengeance in their midst. It was done openly, specifically, intentionally. So when he does it, if the Jews don't try to stop him and they remain silent, the second silence is a correction on the first silence. This is how the Seforno learned, similarly as he said earlier. That's the Betocham. Torah's making a point. It was Betocham that although it was in public view, they did not try to stop him from avenging the vengeance of Hashem. Many years ago, a certain person had certain problems, shalom bayis issues, wasn't fully observant at the time, and he came to Rabbi Pinto, and Rabbi Pinto said to him, were you ever involved in an abortion? That's what he asked him. So the person said, no, my wife never had an abortion. I was not involved in an abortion. He says, oh, I do remember something. When he was in college, there was a girl we had known, a Jewish girl, who became impregnated. She was pregnant, and she was single. And she wanted to go to an abortion clinic to have an abortion. And because she didn't have the emotional strength to go, and he accompanied her and he encouraged her, and they went and she had the abortion. So Rapinto says to me, you realize you did something wrong? Because that's not a reason. If the mother's health is in jeopardy or whatever, if the child is not a well child, it's a different story. You have no right to go. So he said to him, if you ever hear, now going forward, a person who wants to have an abortion, you should try to discourage it. So the discouraging of the abortion now will be a correction that you actually gave this woman the emotional support to go have the abortion. So the second action, by the second statement, discouraging, would be a correction on the original encouragement that you encouraged. Just saying, that's what Rabbi Pinto advised them. If you notice, Pasuk Yud Bey is the word shalom. The vav is split in the middle. Normally, if a letter is split in the middle, they say the Torah is Pasuk. It disqualifies and validates the Sefer Torah. What's the point? It's called vav ketia. The Vav looks like almost like a Yud. It's not full. The Vav is not a fully written correctly, but that's what it's supposed to be written. So there's a Chazal that we find Eliyahu written with a Yud, not Eliyahu. The Vav is not there after the Hey. And Yaakov is written Moli. Yaakov normally is written Yud, Ayin, Kuf, Beis. There's no Vav between the Kuf and the Beis, but it's written in its full pronunciation. Yaakov. Why? So the Chazal tell us that Yaakov is going to, we know that who is the prerequisite to coming Mashiach? Eliyahu Novi. He announces the coming of Mashiach. He's referred to as the Matvasir. He will inform us that Mashiach is coming. So Yaakov took the Vav from Eliyahu as collateral. So, and he will return it to him when he comes to announce the coming of Mashiach. That's Chazal. Shenoto Vav Me'od Lemashkom, Achiyov Mashiach v'yigal es bonov. He took it as collateral till Mashiach comes and will redeem his children. And he quotes a posuk, Yogel Yaakov, Yaakov will rejoice, Yismach Yisrael. It's a posuk in Tehillim. And the Jewish people will rejoice. Yogel Yaakov, Yismach Yisrael. So he explains the letters Yismach are the words of Mashiach. What is it? Yogel Yaakov, Yismach Yisrael. What's Yismach? The letters Yismach and Mashiach are the same letters. When will the Jews rejoice? When the Mashiach comes. Then he explains Shalom, the word, and the Gematria Zeh Mashiach. The word Shalom, Gematria, numerically speaking, is Zeh Mashiach, that's Mashiach. When will we be fully restored Shalom in the fullest sense? When Mashiach comes. Okay, that's the Balaturim. Also, the Sephorah says over here, it makes a point that the intention was when he avenged the vengeance for Hashem, the Yechaper of Israel, he atoned for the Jewish people. So he says, he did it intentionally before in a public setting, specifically intentionally that they should have an atonement. So his whole focus was the Jewish people should be atoned. What is the Kohen? The Kohen's function, his value is he brings kapara. He brings atonement for the Jewish people. Therefore, he merits to have kuna for all eternity, although he was not anointed, as his father was anointed. Nevertheless, because this focus, this emphasis, the whole essence of his being was to bring about kapara, therefore, he merits to be the ultimate atoner, to be qualified to be the Kohen. Okay. Let's see, Tezayin, Yud Zayin.
Rabbi, did
In Hilchos Shemitah of Yovel, and during Shemitah, we're not permitted to be involved in the agricultural aspects of the land. Everything has to be left ownerless during the Shemitah, the Shematical year. So there the Rambam says that, and we know the Levium had no share in the land, because Torah Hashem says, Hashem hu nachloso. Who's the portion of the Levium? Hashem. The Levium, when Moshe said, Mila Hashem Eli Be'egel, and they all went and they committed themselves, despite the danger, as we mentioned, they were the smallest tribe. Therefore, they merited to be the officiants of Hashem. So Rambam writes, not only is Levi the Nachlas Hashem, any Jew who's willing to dedicate his life for Kiddush Hashem and dedicate his life for Torah and doing mitzvahs and relies on Hashem, he assumes the same status as Shevet Levi. Hashem will nachloso, and Hashem will provide for him, so on and so forth. He doesn't have to engage in the material if he's dedicated to that level. Pinchas, so we see that a person, just as Pinchas, he wasn't a Kohen initially, but due to his level of selfless dedication for Kiddush Hashem, he assumed that status. So a Jew, although he's not by pedigree a Levi, but if he goes and he's dedicated, as the Levim were dedicated, he is reclassified as the Levi, and therefore Hashem will treat him as if he's his Nachlo. He's considered, even though he doesn't have the pedigree, he's not qualified to officiate in the Beis HaMikdash, but in terms of the relationship with Hashem, he has that same relationship. That's the famous Rambam in Hilchos Shemitah of the Yovel. You should go and cause them great pain. We'll see. There's Arachaim HaKadosh, there's something that should be Kisem, Osam, and you should smite them. Why? You should, so Medrash says, although before we laid siege on any city, we had to extend the peace pipe to give them a choice whether they want to make peace or not and be under our dominance. The Midyan were not given that choice. Normally, you're not permitted to go in a community and destroy the fruit trees. You're not permitted. When it came to destruction of Midyan, you destroy it all. Any accommodation that you give any other nation that you could conquer, Midyan was not given that accommodation. And why? Because through the machinations, they wanted to bring this great level of pain upon you through their machination regarding the Balpor. That's that idolatry. Valvar Kozmgas, the sea Midyan Achosam, and you were seduced, a princess to be involved at that level, to seduce, and the king should give his daughter for the sake of bringing the greatest persecution of Jewish people. That's only an indication of their hate for us. They want to destroy us. Hamuka b'yom ha'magefa al Dvarpor, who was smitten on the day of the plague because of the Balpor. The Rav Kalatsky explains over here. What's this whole idea? It doesn't say now. And it says, Achre ha'magefa, the person continues, Suis Rosh, count them, because since there was a Magef, there was a plague, and there were 24,000 or even more who died, we go and we recount the Jews, and after that, we speak about going to war against the Midianites and destroying them. Only after that. But not immediately afterwards. We speak about other things in between. So he explains it this way. He says, what is the main focus? Why should you see them in the most negative light? Because they wanted to actually seduce you to sin. To sin. It's not because we lost 24,000 Jews in the plague. It's something. We have an axe to grind where you have to pay because you caused 24,000 Jews to die. That's not what the Torah says. The reason why you should see them in a negative light is because they wanted to foul you up, cause you to sin through Balpor and through this licentiousness, this involvement with these non-Jewish women, sexually speaking. That was their intention. Even to the point that they're willing that the princess, she should be to lead the pack and encourage it. So it's not the personal loss. It's that they wanted to undermine and disenfranchise you from God. Now, he says, even the Jews who were not involved in with the women, but if a person has a thought and that he has a desire for this, although he restrained himself, that you were exposed to it, it causes the person to be tainted to a degree. It compromises his spirituality. So not only did the ones who died were killed, the ones who even remained alive had to be atoned. They needed kapora. And he says you can have full kapora even when a person has remorse when we do tshuva, but even after we do the tshuva, if you still feel you have a desire, you're suppressing it, you're not fully purged of that sin. The Jews first had to see the Midianites in the most negative light to the point that to despise them. I'll give you an example. A woman wants to seduce a man, and he has great desire for her. And then he realizes that the seduction is only that because she wanted to poison him and kill his family. That was original intent. The moment he sees her in that light, the level of hate for that woman, although she came originally in sheep's clothing, he realizes what the intention was. He has no desire, whatever desire he had before, immediately evaporates because he sees a true intention. The Jews, to be fully atoned, although these women were beautiful women, they had a desire for them, they were attracted to them. As it says by Yitzmadu, they were almost like attached to them. But realizing who they really were and what their intention was, because only then are they able to have a full atonement. Otherwise, you're still attached to the chet, even in thought, even though you didn't engage in action. This is the Orach Chaim HaKadosh over here. And he writes later, originally I mentioned yesterday, originally Hashem says, Nekom Nikmas, Hashem Yisro b'Midrash, avenge the vengeance of the Jewish people against Midrash. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Nekom Nikmas, Hashem b'Midrash, avenge God's vengeance. So I mentioned what Rashi says, because the enemy of the Jew is the enemy of Hashem. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh later writes, no, that to be fully, the battle itself wasn't only a physical battle, it was a spiritual battle. We find that Bilam was there, and it was a battle that had to do with spirituality, the good and the evil. To be able for the good to be victorious over the evil, it had to be purely for the sake of Hashem. It's not because, we lost 24,000 of our brothers, and you caused all this loss to us. There's nothing to do with that. It's purely for the sake of Hashem. That's why they're going to this battle. They're avenging God's vengeance. And Moshe Rabbeinu says it's important. It's not a personal gripe. It's not a personal act of the grind. It's Hashem's vengeance. And only when the Jew is totally detached from his own personal reason, it's purely for the sake of Hashem, that mitzvah is the ultimate mitzvah. And as a result of that, you'll be victorious in battle. But the moment you have that personal interest to avenge your brothers, the 24,000 died in the plague, it's very questionable whether you can be victorious. Therefore, it's Nikvas Hashem b'Midrash. And he uses a term which the Rambam in his Mishnayos, famous Rambam, in his Pirush Mishnayos, in the end of Marcos writes, it says, Rotzai Kodesh Baruch Hu Zakis Yisrael. Hashem wanted to bring merit to the Jewish people. Lefiko Chir B'Lem Torah Mitzvos. Therefore, he gave us an abundance of Torah mitzvos. So the Rambam, famous Rambam asks, if we have so many mitzvos, we have 248 positive commandments, 365 negative, and we have so much to contend with, there's a greater likelihood you're going to fail. Why doesn't it give us less mitzvos? And it'll be easier to contend with them. Why do you give us such an array of mitzvos in abundance? And it says, because he wanted to bring merit to us. So the famous Rambam writes that even though you may fail and sin throughout life, but if you do one mitzvah once in a lifetime, you do it perfectly, you merit the ultimate place in the world to come. I mean, to atone, you could be atoned, person does tshuva, person go to Gehenna, whatever it is. But to merit that special place in the world to come, you have to do that mitzvah perfectly. So he wants to give us opportunity. He gives us such an array of mitzvahs over a lifetime that even if you do it once in a lifetime, you merit that special place in the world to come. And you have that special relationship with Hashem. That's the Rambam, famous Rambam. So I'm saying the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says something similar here. To do the mitzvah purely, Nikvas Hashem, that's the ultimate mitzvah, has that ultimate value to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, the prerequisite to the war is tzor. You have to reflect on what they try to do to us. There has to be a gut hatred for them. That whatever desire you had for them, anything you're so positive about them, there's nothing to draw from them, and you see them in the most negative light. The trees you destroy, the fruit trees, although normally you're not permitted. Hashem doesn't want you to see them in any context of benefit or positive. And as a result of that, when you do the mitzvah, you do purely for the sake of Hashem, And therefore, that will be, and that's, he says, that's the mitzvah that God values and praises, which is similarly to the words of the Rambam in Pirush Mishnayos. To remember what Amalek did to us. And if you read the words, the pasuk, it's the pasuk at the end of Kiseitze, and the Malbim explains what's discussed in the pasuk of the mitzvahs, I say the positive commandment to remember what Amalek did to us. Asher korcha baderech. They came upon you when you were on the road, on the way. Right, it was after the splitting of the sea. We didn't come to. They didn't attack us when we were in Canaan. Then the Torah says they were lo yorei Elokim. They didn't fear God. So the Malbim explains what the Torah is pointing out. Why did Amalek attack us? You'd say very often people go to war, nations go to war for land acquisition, for defensive purposes. The Torah makes it a point we didn't have a land yet. The Torah makes it a point we were weary, we were fatigued as a result of traveling. So it wasn't a question defensive. It wasn't offensive. We weren't a threat for them. Thirdly, you'd say it's a jihad. It's a holy war. But it says, these people believed in nothing. So why did they go against us? It was pure hatred. And there was no ulterior motive, which is normally a reason to go to war. It was they could not tolerate the existence of a Jew. So Zohar is a shosel Amalek. So the Chinuch writes, why do you have to remember what Amalek wanted to do to us? Because if you really internalize and reflect on that, the hatred will be so intense, there's no such thing as forgive and forget. There's no such thing. They wanted to uproot us and destroy us without any justified ulterior motive. There was no reason. It's purely direct hatred because they did not tolerate our existence. And that's what we say, on the way, we were fatigued. They didn't fear God. And as Zolda, that Chinuch says, when you remember that, then you always remember the hatred will be so intense, you're going to destroy them. Because that never will change. Amalek is always Amalek.
Nothing.
Say Hakol Kol Yaakov Yadayim Esav. The voice is the voice of Yaakov, and the hands are the hands of Esav. Esav, we find that in utero, Yaakov and Esav go battling, because Yaakov is a representation of good, and Esav is the representation of evil. Halachi Reb Shimon Yochai says Esav sonely Yaakov. This will never change. Esav hates Yaakov. Cannot tolerate his existence. Amalek is the son of Esav. That's the most intense level of what expression of that hatred. We cannot tolerate the Jewish people. Even after Kriyas Yamsuf, where the whole world stood in awe of what they saw, they attacked us. And that aura immediately was removed because they attacked us. They were a nomad band, attack people with the whole world trembles from them. Lo yorei Elokim. They don't fear God. They don't have a capacity even to be impressed with that. It's always something they cannot tolerate. So just as they can't tolerate us, Hashem says, therefore, you must expunge them. They must be eradicated from existence. For that reason. But everything initially is a choice. Everybody, otherwise they had a choice. If you never had a choice, there's no culpability.
Just if I can follow, that's partially responsive. But the source of this, if you say that it's in utero, from the time Rivka was pregnant with the two children, this is implanted by Hashem this is how the world's going to be.
Correct.
Rabbi, if I can say something.
Wait. Let Mark just finish speaking. Then
so there's no source. It's just this is we need to understand that this is how the world is. It's unusual to have a level of hatred of that extent that is not driven by something that somebody has historically experienced. it's spontaneous generation that this hatred exists.
However, this hatred could be dealt with, could be controlled. And it's in the words what Yitzchak had said, Kol Kol Yakri Daim De'esov. It's the Midrash in Anecho, where if the Kol is Kol Yaakov, if we behave and we study Torah and that, then they're incapacitated.
No, but it's just forget about all that. It's just like this hatred exists.
Correct.
It's almost as it's a de novo concept.
Correct.
Rabbi, what I wanted to say to answer Mark's question, when you look at the story of who Amalek was, okay, he wasn't directly the son of Esav, right? Amalek was the product of Eliphaz and Timnah. Timnah was the concubine to Eliphaz,
Correct.
and their child was Amalek. And the story goes that Timnah wanted to join the Jewish people.
Yeah.
She went to Avram. She tried to join the Jewish people.
Rejected, but she was rejected.
And she was rejected based on her lineage or whatever. Pedigree. So she finally wanted at least to be part of it in some way. So she hooks up with the Esav line, okay, of our Semitic heritage. And she has a product named Amalek. So I'm sure, I don't know what was said around the table, in those days, or what Amalek learned or whatever, but it's a little bit similar to Yashka, right? In the sense that, Yashka was also part of us and was, sort of left. No, it's not comparable, but it's a similar. In other words, it was rejected. It was rejected. Like Timnah was rejected.
He was a Jew.
Right, but I'm saying he was rejected.
Look, Karl Marx, the father of communism. He was a Jew too.
Yeah. But anyway, but the story of Amalek is I don't know more about it, but where it comes from.
At the beginning, Torah describes the state of affairs of what the world was. There was Tov, Avo, Choshech HaPnei. So the Medrash says each of these depictions represent one of the exiles in the future who are going to suppress and try to destroy the Jewish people. The first one reference is referring to Bavel. It's going to be the Babylonian exile. The second one references the Persians, which has to do with Amalek too. Story of Purim. And then Choshech is the Greek exile. That's Hanukkah. And the ultimate exile, which is Tahom, just as Tahom means the unlimited, unending depth of water, the exile of Edom is unending. It's the longest exile. So initially, at the beginning of creation, there is a context that these people will have the ability to make choices to be in a position to bring about those exiles. Everything's choice. These people had choice. But God created a setting, a context, that if they make the choice, they will serve in this capacity to exile the Jews. So God is foretelling what's going to be, but if there's no setting that they're able to make these choices, you can never have these exiles. So that's part and parcel of existence, that there's always going to be a counterbalance to good, and these various exiles are the ultimate counterbalance to what we represent. Levi, great Amoraim, meets Eliyahu and asks him, when is Mashiach coming? So he says to Reb Shua Levi, he's able to come at this moment. It all depends on you people. If you toe the line and you reach a certain level of spirituality, he comes immediately. You're not there. And the Chofetz Chaim in his introduction makes it a point that the Bayis Sheni was destroyed because Sinas Chinam. So here we have a Beis Mikdash that stands already. And if Sinas Chinam was sufficient reason to destroy it. So to rebuild it, what do you need? You have to deal with that and deal with it appropriately, that there's no longer be Sinas Chinam. So until we've dealt with the issue of Sinas Chinam, we're not having the third Beis Mikdash. So it's within. That means even today, whatever you want to call it, Avas Chinam, you put any label you want on it, but factually, it's not. It's genuine. As much as you want to convince yourself it's genuine, it's not genuine. There's always some undercurrent of this sinas chinam, and therefore it's not happening.
It's you got Brad Lander. Like you don't need to go any further.
Yeah, I mean the man is almost like sick.
It's,
Self-hating Jews.
right.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see the fourth chapter, page 398 in the Feldham edition. Next to the bottom paragraph. He says, I've already explained and articulated with this introduction that in every aspect of one's life, one should have trust in Hashem. Therefore, a person, whether it's relating to his personal existence, his health, his livelihood, his family, what surrounds him, what has relevance of this world versus the world to come, whether it's the world to come. He fleshed out 7 things. That anybody who understands who God is, and you have that trust, and every one of these things which he had spoken about, one's supposed to have trust. First, he spoke about just the physicality of a person, which pertains to him personally. What relates to you personally, when you live and when you die. The food which he needs to sustain him. Your attire, your clothing, your domicile, your residence, your health setting, your illness, and your predilections, the inborn traits and the characteristics which we have. And how to approach each one of these areas, how one has to have faith in an appropriate manner. What is that? You should be totally reliant on the approach which is presented to you by Hashem. I just heard a story my son was telling me last night. The Tosher Rebbe, Zeichat Tzadok Levroch, he lived up in Montreal. He was a very holy man. He was a miracle worker. And a person comes to him, he says to him, he has such sorrows, he has so many problems, health, business, family, financial. He had a whole list of problems. And he's complaining. So the Tosher Rebbe goes, and he has a hot glass of tea, scalding hot. And he's sitting by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe is a very holy man, and he's come for a blessing. So as after he finishes explaining all his problems, he takes the scalding hot glass of tea, and he says, I want you to repeat each one of your problems. And every time he repeats a problem, he pours a little bit of this hot scalding tea on his lap. And of course, he feels pain. So he thinks the person who's having this hot tea spilt on his lap thinks that this is an atonement and that will correct each one of his problems. By the end of the session, everything will be okay. So after he finishes and the Rebbe finishes, empties the hot glass of tea on his lap, so Rebbe says to him, he says, what do you think? What do you think I poured continuously the hot tea on your lap, the scalding hot water? I figured that the pain that I had is an atonement for what? And therefore that will better my situation. He says, so why don't you ask me why I was doing it? He says, because should I ask the Rebbe, the holy Rebbe, why he's doing it? He has a good reason to do it, because he understands that the only way things are going to correct themselves is I have to pour scalding hot water on your lap, that I should experience the pain. Because the Rebbe understands what's good for me, and therefore I wouldn't dare ask the Rebbe why he's doing it. So the Rebbe says to him, listen to your words. He says, and when Hashem goes and causes you pain, me, you wouldn't dare ask, because what I do, of course, it's in my best interest. But when Hashem does it, you have a problem. Why is he doing it? If you don't have a problem, why I'm doing it? Because you understand it's for the sake of atonement, that things should get better. So why are you asking why Hashem is doing it to you? That's the punchline on the story. Same idea. We have many trials, challenges in life. But if you have trust and understand whatever relates to ourselves on a personal level, in our environment, or whatever it is, whether it's our health, our attire, our residence, our children, our family, our friends, our enemies, whatever it is, it's all part of Hashem's equation, how to deal with our existence, and it's in our best interest. And who are we to ask why? You have to have trust, and if you have trust, you have to ask the question. That's basically what we're talking about here.